think the most important values in sounds now are about enhancing diversity, but also very much it's about transparency in the curating process, and it's very much about inclusion and involving and enhancing the artist selections that we are working with to give space to new voices. And I think a development for the contemporary music scene that I would like to see within Sounds Now in a European perspective is that after this project, that selection processes and curating programs within our festivals and partner festivals have become transparent and also more inclusive.
I'm Elsa Mbala. I am a sound artist based in Berlin, born in Cameroon. I was introduced to music through my guitar. I'm a guitar player, singer-songwriter. I would say 7 years I've been more into electronic music and graphic score. So I design graphic score also as a way to de-westernize music theory and to just expand the understanding that we have of sound and musicality. So we just finished a 4-day workshop where I played with participants. Well, first of all, I gathered instruments for them. I let them play and record themselves. On the second day, they themselves cut pieces out that they are fancy, and we put it together on my dough and created a 1-minute piece. And the third day, I did an interview of each one of them, asking them about their understanding of sound and home.
Sounds Now really came out of a fairly informal collective of contemporary music festivals that had been working together, co-producing, co-commissioning work for maybe the last decade. And I think that's because there was a real need to have a group of festivals who were much more interested in sharing work and working together. I think in contemporary music, perhaps traditionally there's been an emphasis on people having world premieres at their festival, and there's an argument to say that has perhaps restricted the ability for contemporary music to move around and to have multiple performances. And if it doesn't have those multiple performances, of course, then you're not really building a new repertoire or new audiences for that work. So there was a group of festivals who were more interested in multiple performances of work and sharing work. And that then also made things very affordable and allowed the ability to invest in a younger generation of performer and artists, because you could invest a small amount in a commission or a production, and then if you're sharing that between 5-6 festivals, then the artist knows there are 5-6 performances in 5-6 territories right at the beginning of the project, and I think that's a very attractive proposition for everybody.
Hi David, it's Stephen calling. I'm just wondering if you were there. It's about 5:10. I got a call from Vince saying that he couldn't come over tonight, that he really couldn't face it, and I can certainly understand that. But maybe you and I should still get together. I just don't know.
I'm Zubin Kanga, a pianist, composer, and technologist. I co-commissioned Answer Machine Tape 1987 by Philip Venables, alongside co-commissioning Sounds Now festivals, Time of Music Festival, November Music, and HCMF. Answer Machine Tape 1987 focuses on New York visual artist and AIDS activist David Wojnarowicz, and the turbulent period leading up to the death of Peter Hujar, his former lover, close friend and fellow artist, from an AIDS-related illness in 1987. The work's focal point is Vorinarowicz's answer machine tape from the days leading up to Hujar's death, featuring calls from Hujar, other artists, friends and lovers, to explore not just his life, but that period of the New York art scene, queer history and the AIDS crisis.
I want safer spaces for queers. I want silence and fresh air and access to fresh water. I hear birds are singing. Oh, what a sad song. Where did they go? I want mistakes, more mistakes, and errand journeys. I want my friends to be here, nothing more than my friends and lovers and dreams and survival. We are many. We cry at night. I want this government to understand they kill us with each violent speech. I never know what is the best solution. If it's more about a journey and softness towards my expectations. I do project, but I'm keen to drift away along our needs, respectful of our diversity at play. For me, what is very important is that this international professional meetings are happening in Warsaw because in post-pandemic times and during the Russian invasion on Ukraine, it's pretty crucial and urgent to support the artistic communities that are here because they very often include Ukrainian and Belarusian artists and professionals that escaped the countries invaded. For me, it's also important to talk and think about different and non-Western epistemologies and ways of being together. And also because when we look at the broader European map, these countries are very often marginalized and have lower visibilities comparing to other Western countries. So I think these occasions are places of exchange and encounter, but also sharing of resources that are very often lacking here.
I'm Maarten Bijgens. I'm director of Festival 2021 and Transit. We are in the buildings of Stuk Art Center in Leuven, in the middle of an edition of New Music Festival Transit.
I'm Eloisa Amarau. I am a musician and the director of the Ultima Festival in Oslo.
And I'm Tom de Kok. I'm also a musician and a programmer at Wilde Westen Kortrijk.
Thanks so much. It's been an amazing time for me to be back in Catholic. It was actually before pandemic time. I performed here at the Sonic City Festival. It was before I released my debut album. It's called Aira. So I'm very happy to be back in here. Thanks very much for having me. I'm going to use a sound which I field recorded a few years ago in Japan. More precisely, I recorded this sound of ocean in Fukushima. Probably you also know about the disaster of nuclear power plant in Fukushima. I was at the time invited to go to Fukushima to perform at the ceremony. It was to celebrate, reopen the area for the local people who used to live there for the first time since then. Of course, for those people who grew up in Fukushima, Fukushima is only one place for them as a home, and especially for those people who lost their family or precious friend or someone beloved by the disaster. Fukushima is, again, only one place they have memory of them attached to the land.
Perhaps it's interesting to think about that there are two, many different ways of understanding the colonization, I think, in the context of contemporary music and in the context of Silence Now as well. Like one of them is a very concrete, let's say, question of representation of voices that haven't been part of a certain like dominant discourse. And then we have examples of that in some of the productions that were shown at Ultima, for example, where one example that I particularly like is it's a concert by Hatis Noit, the Japanese singer who integrates many different types of folk music in her singing. And is very and mixes them in an interesting way, like both with her own voice and with looping and electronics. So we have different musical genres, but also different cultural perspectives. And the second way of understanding it is pretty much derived from this kind of like idea of voices that have been oppressed or suppressed, is the mindset or the frames of the discourses that come from this, which dictate the ways we listen, the modes we program music.
And that was a very clear starting point to say, okay, so we very much touch a wide range of communities within our education projects, but not necessarily for the main concert stage. And I think there was a feeling that was also perhaps not so much to do with music, but largely to do with all the things that surround that music in the concert hall and concert stages. Very often in different cultures, there's less of a separation between performer and artist. It's more of a joint celebration. And so that led us to be very interested, I think, in how we could change some of our curatorial practices that might present contemporary music, or actually I prefer to call it how we present sound in a way that perhaps impacted on people's daily lives as they went around their business or their lives, how we took that sound out of concert spaces into other spaces, and to be interested really in how we better communicated with artists in terms of our aims and the things that we wanted to do in relation to engaging with those communities, and to work with artists from perhaps a wider geographic and cultural diversity, and to get their ideas and thoughts on what they could do if they were supported better by this contemporary music festival network. So that was kind of the starting point of Sounds Now, and the reason we felt it was the right time to apply for European money to support these ideas.
So Mo created a sound piece last year, and he came again this year to create a sound piece inspired by the natural environment where we are, but also he wanted to sort of connect somehow with the African community in Belgium, so he created a piece called Lumumba's Groove, so referencing Patrice Lumumba, the history of colonization in Belgium. I'm Christine Ayene, and I'm leading the curating lab here at Musica in Klankerbos in Belgium. And the inspiration behind the project was that when I was invited to develop a lab, so really a workshop, a curating workshop, the first thing I did was look up Pelt, because I didn't know where it was in Belgium. And I became really interested in the fact that it's in a region that's at the border of Germany and the Netherlands. So I started thinking along the lines of nature, because we're in the woods here, and also borders and how borders are construct. As an African person traveling, I've always been aware of how we perceived, either people from migrant background or just traveling. Even if you have a European passport, as a black person, you're always seen as a suspect, or a possible illegal immigrant. So like this notion of borders is something that I've been interested to address. So as the curators, we also need to address audience outreach. How do we reach out to disadvantaged audiences? It's things like, I know that when I do a project with any institution, I will ask what kind of audience they're going to have, if it's paying, because obviously if you have to pay, there would be less visitors, and in which case who will not have access to this project. So like it's questions like that we need to ask.
Connected to this is also how we look at ourselves as organizations, and that's probably sort of the least visible part of the project, but maybe equally important. I would say that we have an approach which is more or less about a 360-degree approach to change. Because I believe personally very strongly that if we don't change our organizations from within and the way we work, then we won't achieve the other goals. And that's very much about our own single festival on the one hand, but I think it's a lot more about how we work together and how we perceive each other, and that we through this project can also give space to these processes together, and thereby also create this on a European level. We also have activities which I like very much, that there is also a diverse range of activities in Sounds Now to achieve our changes, that what we want. And apart from the artistic productions, it's also very much about labs, curators' labs as we have called it, and curating diversity courses also, and a format of open space. And I think also very much focus on the process in the various projects. So not only about, okay, here's the project, do you want it or not, we'll do it or not, what does it cost, but very much how do we approach this, how do we do this together, how do we develop it, what are the challenges. And I think for us to really succeed, we also very early on have to be very much aware of the challenges that we face in this process. I think the challenges are very much about the things that we want to change, that we really achieve that change. Because I think working with festivals, there might be ideals at every year's festival. We definitely want to do this, and at some point comes in pragmatic issues like time restraints or budget restraints. And often what can happen is then we do the automated responses. We carry on with our habits. Okay, we kind of know what we want to do. But I think that we are able to work also with the change, even though time might be limited, finances might be limited. So this is very much also about the mindset of how we develop the projects and how we respond to everyday pragmatic issues like time and money. So Sounds Now is a very important project in the contemporary music field, because there is this situation where contemporary music has historically been an extremely European affair. And I think that we definitely need to address this issue within Europe to enhance it within Europe. And here's a great need for change, and we can look out for inspiration also outside Europe. Like we have mentors from outside Europe who work with these issues who can inspire us. But also changing this from within is definitely necessary. And also a challenge, I think, is in terms of the curating process. That we all know that these curating processes can, from the outside, and they definitely also can be very closed, and it's hard to see how are choices made and why are those choices made and not those, and the kind of idea of the contemporary music scene as a closed gentleman's club, I think it's something that we really do need to address. On the one hand, by enlightening people as to how choices are made, but also to make choices in a different way?
You can continue where you were.
I don't know. It doesn't really
So it was previously more male.
focused, male and West European. As in the network we know as institutions, and we were very aware of that, and we wanted to do something about it because we were sure that this is not a typical West European thing. It's worldwide thing, and to open up this perspective, we wanted to make things possible within our organizations and within our festivals. So that's actually what we did. And at first it was maybe a little bit naive. So we had a very open mind, and we thought, okay, this is the way we should go, and it was very straightforward. But along the way, we noticed that it's not a straightforward thing. I mean, it's like going to Rome, but it's not take the quickest road. It's sometimes even going through China or Australia to go to Rome. You really need to go different paths to understand what inclusion, what curating in inclusion through diversity means. And that's something which we realized after 5 years. It's an ongoing thing. It's not finished yet. It's not after 5 years, okay, check the box, we go for the next topic or something or item. No, it's really about a continuously thing and creating an attitude. And that's we learned along the way, and that's as well what we will do and discuss in the final symposium which will happen in October 24, together with Transit Festival and Oor Traders Festival in Belgium. And we will look into this topic like, okay, you have institutions and you have this more grassroots practice. You have the inside-outside perspective, but you have the top-down, bottom-up perspective. So it's a 60 degrees way of looking to curating and inclusion through diversity.
It is very complicated theme, and it needs a lot of learning. I think that has also been something that I valued a lot about this project, that it allowed us really to also investigate our own way of thinking and all the habits and bias we kind of carry with us ourselves, and really try to understand why you take the choices you take, because if you don't understand really why you choose what you choose, it's not possible for you to make other choices. So I think this kind of double function that the Sounds Now project had, that we really worked with our own self-understanding and what is it actually to be a festival director, to curate a festival, and then kind of also try to explore and develop new methods and formats and ways of creating relations, which is actually what we are trying to. I think that double thing has been really, really interesting.
As an artist, being invited to give workshops of embodied listening during the symposium, what was very important for me is to bring into question and into embodied presence in the space that we are bodies and the bodies are different, and that these differences matter. As a queer feminist, it's pretty important for me to speak about it and to also create safer spaces for people to express bodily, to show themselves, to express themselves through speech, movement, poetry, whatever medium they feel comfortable in. How do you say the dirigent, the person, like imagine conductor, imagine a very experimental or some autumn composition, but to really like about, it's not about music, it's about like you stretching, as if the music is about stretching the conductor body, make it very dramatic or like super melancholic or whatever your music.
We we have, for example, had this curating lab at Ultima, which was a group of young curators who had sessions with us at the festival, but also with invited guests to reflect on the mechanisms of music programming, who gets to be programmed, how to program collectively, what the mechanisms of, let's say, gatekeeping, and so it was kind of awareness making. It's quite interesting project. I think some of you have had this.
Yeah, the curating lab we did as well. And we did it with students from both pop and rock, and I mean, we have young curators in the pop and rock programmation of the Western, and also students from the advanced master in contemporary music who are particularly interested in all the topics of inclusion, participation, how to reach other audiences, how to mix genres also. So we broadened the audience of contemporary music and classical music as a whole, of also the classical music scene, so they can really participate while doing it.
This is still in classical music something very new, in the sense that very often it's been about friends doing things on stage together in a concert hall where this space is now. And so, for example, lately we are very much talking about getting out from the concert hall to the public space, but equally to the private space. And in fact, when talking about getting out from the concert hall and so on, with a lot of these sort of methodologies that we are using, the exciting thing is, in fact, that when we are looking at that, the history of a public concert space where somebody was a place where everybody could come together and be equal. That was something that in history was not possible in private homes. So already when I'm mentioning all these different examples, you already see how conflictual all these questions are, because depending on how you're phrasing things, they can mean different things and so on. And I foresee that these sort of like all these sort of projects and courses and things that we are dealing with will put all these sort of like questions on the forefront in a way that very much of us, we who are part of Sounds Now as partners and artistic directors, we will probably not, I mean, what we'll probably learn very much is that things do not mean what we thought they meant. So it will be an eye-opener in many ways for most of us. And in that sense, that something new comes up and we didn't think about that is not really a negative thing, because in fact, some of the most positive outcomes comes from failures.
It is really something that is something, a big ship that is kind of, you can slowly change the direction. And I feel that this is actually starting to happen now, because there's things that we understand, things we had time and was allowed to test out, and also things that maybe wasn't as we thought it would be, and then we had to change a little bit the direction. So for me and for the Spore Festival, it has been extremely meaningful and really kind of, but only for the first kind of stepping stone that we really, really want to go further in that direction.
Hello, my name is Eleni Iconiadou. In Kypseli, the municipality the municipality market of Kypseli. It came out of conversations we started having in 2019 about how education and knowledge in the West are very much tied to a project of dehumanization. How there were no black and brown people to study with and to learn with, and no curriculum and no theory that reflected any of this struggle, and how this relates to all of us, and not just to brown and black people and people of color, but to all of us living in the living in the present, and the urgency of the present moment, and to talk about what our artists and people in this field doing, what they can do, what they should do, what we should all be doing, what we should all be doing anyway, but in the context of art, who are trying to stop the slaughtering of the Palestinian people happening as we speak, as I'm speaking right now.
And inclusion is only possible by looking towards the diversity within the society, and specifically for music and sound art, it's something which maybe it's a little bit more like technical approach, which makes the level of attending very high. But that's what we want to do with Musica, to make it very easygoing, very easy to understand in the way you are at that moment. So you develop through your own experience in what sound art and music could be, new music could be. And I think that's an important thing we do. But that's, of course, this diversity is through going through very young children, but as well professionals, amateurs, pre-professionals, and broaden up and make this connection. It's all about connection, which the project actually is about.
Then the question is raised: what is contemporary music? I mean, is it academic, classical, Western music, or can it be much more than that? And which festival wants to go in that discourse or not? So it's a big question, and I think we're all struggling with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we are very much focused on, let's say, opening our field, whereas perhaps we just need to redefine what it is, and then by doing that, and then by including other artists and what they really care about, then we are going much further than just a question of presenting a body that hasn't been on that stage. It's about what this body wants to do and not about what this body represents. So it's kind of the next steps, or actually the most important steps is to...
And one very particular challenge that can still be developed further is that it's always a festival that's being programmed by a programmer, artistic director, or whatever that function is. So the tension between somebody deciding what to program and what not, and the possibilities of things of diversity within the field is always going to be some kind of tension, and the willingness to give up some of that ownership as a programmer of your own festival, that's a very tricky thing, and it takes a lot of courage to let go of part of that. And maybe Sounds Now is a kind of invitation to move a little step towards that.
Yes, let's hope we will develop that more in the future, this kind of collective curatorial practice, or just other ways to make decisions and to make a program happen.
The festival was actually born with this idea of how can you share both the power, how can you share who chooses what, and we have been interested in working with over the years, and I think when you nail it down, it really also comes to people, to these meetings between curators, between artists, between cities, and that has been our interest from the start, to create many kind of formats that can allow a lot of different meetings, which also means that, well, we are a festival for contemporary music and sound art, but we're also really interested in opening that field up towards other art forms, towards other genres, to all the things that we don't know yet.
Hi everyone. All right. It's very new stuff, actually. I wonder if we even discussed how to start this song.
We have no idea.
Okay, good. Henning.
I think this is a many-layered thing about curation, in the sense that curation is always an act of negotiation, of interaction with different things. It's about who is going behind what project. It's about what project gets funding. So it's not always so simple to really, and especially with a lot of these projects and things that we, for example, been working on. It sounds now like diversity and ethnicity and minorities and so on. They're very complex subjects, and they're complex in the sense because it involves, of course, existing persons and existing creators, and we don't always think the same. When I'm saying we are probably not disagreeing on things, but what most often will happen is that different definition means different things to different persons, and different if you're a creator or if you are a performer, you will want to involve yourself differently with these things. And nowadays, when we are living in a society which is very personal and publicly personal, this usually becomes much more complex than we had thought.
And then this happened to me lately, and I started to really become aware of how I'm connected to the rest of the space. So physically, I don't really feel like I want to be here. But at the same time, I realized then how present I am. And there are different elements that make me feel like I'm connected physically to everything around me. And all the objects and all the furniture and everything is like a diary absorbing my state every day, my behaviors, my feelings. The next song is sung by the sofa.
I'm Genevieve Murphy, and I've been performing with my band last night at Night Air Festival. It's definitely a debatable subject, especially also because of how people can appreciate certain influences coming from around the world, but it has to go through you. It has to really come from an honest place that inspires you as an artist. And it's interesting that you say that, because a piece that I'm going to work on next, and also one that I have been making for, well, the one that was experienced also last night when I played the bagpipes. This is represents such a Scottish kind of signature, you know. And I think that the thing that I realized about that is that I don't need to do anything more that is Scottish. I don't need to stand in a kilt, and I don't need to play Scottish music. It will sound like Scotland. And I read a manifesto that was saying that the person was from Japan, and he was saying that just because I'm from Japan doesn't mean I need to make Japanese work. He's a visual artist, because Japan will be in my work because that's where I'm from. And so a lot of people say that they hear Scottish folk melodies in my work and things, and it's not actually intentional, but if I really connect to myself, this is the kind of work that comes out. So I often try to get other instruments to sound like the bagpipes, because it makes their instruments sound like crazy and be another instrument altogether, but at the same time they will always still have their core sound. And so I'm very interested in how things, even if they try to be something else, they will always still have their identity underneath that.
We are really taking things in a new direction also as Sport Festival. And one of the things that we feel is very important that happens now is that the supporting bodies, that the funds and the art councils, that they also really maybe also need to adapt now. Don't you agree?
Totally. I mean, it's,
you know, a
yes,
lot of funds are very traditional in the in the mindset, and this is something that I really also hope can change a bit.
Hello, namaste. My name is Nistal. I am originally from Nepal, now based in Berlin. Today we are at Aarhus in Denmark in the context of Spore Festival. It's a very a complex question to answer, but in my context, in my practice, I feel like to be diverse means to bring various musical traditions that we are going to showcase tonight through different approaches using traditional instruments like radung is a long horn instrument that used to be played that is played by monks in a Buddhist monasteries, and also we have Nepalese sarangi. We play various Tibetan cymbals, gongs, and singing bowl. When we are doing music in a very experimental way, that is also a way to keep those instruments in a performance, so that we also it also somehow defines there is no caste or class. There is no ritual. It's just the instrument, and like we praise it. It was here from a long time, and it was ignored by a society and only seen as a instrument played by lower caste people. So it is also somehow not exoticizing it, but also bringing them into the context. I was invited to curate a program that was funded by Sounds Now in collaboration with Ultima Oslo Contemporary Music Festival.
So we have to understand that such events are events really, in a sense that like you can invite people to the group process, and this group process is evolving, yeah. But it can happen that when it reach like, for example, interesting point, at least from my perspective of facilitator, it's already too late to do something because we have to finish, yeah, because we have to close the gathering. And here I felt it somehow that we after these 2 days we started to show not only what is similar, but also the differences. And this is the moment, this really growing moment, yeah, like you can build a lot on that. At the same time we had to finish, yeah, we had to close the event. So yeah, this is reality. Yes, I like this metaphor of guests at house, because you know I feel that I can privilege some guests because of different reasons. Because, for example, they have kids and they need some space for them to, you know, play, or they are late, or they don't drink something, don't eat something. This is all important. And at the same time, I feel that these are, like everybody are responsible for themselves. And like, to me, like, this is how I would like to treat others, like partners, not like victims, and not like somebody who need to be take care of all the time. Yeah? And I think it's about respect. So what you can do, you can take care on some formal conditions, and then to treat others like in an equal way, like responsible adults.
For us at Transit, one of the main challenges being involved in Sounds Now is how to go about inclusion as kind of participatory projects, being a festival that is basically presenting concerts in a very tight time space. We're in one weekend, 8 or 9 concerts. And so the entire infrastructure of us as a festival is made or is pointed towards that. And how can you accommodate something that requires a process? And that's why it's good that there are other partners within Sounds Now who have a different setup and can have this kind of developing and expanding projects. So that was one big challenge. We have done some participatory project in the multimodal project with people from disadvantaged neighborhood in Leuven, young kids who were kind of co-creating. So it was a really beautiful project, but it required us also to work with an external partner who could do this long-term trajectory with the children throughout many months, actually, towards a very, very tiny presentation moment only at a festival.
So that would suggest to me that there's a gap between working with people in workshop and community settings, but we're then not transferring that to the things we're doing to invest in artists and artistic productions at a professional level. And there has to then be a better way that we can involve communities and feeling that the festival and the festival programme across all the levels that we work at is more relevant to them and their lives.
If I can say something to this, it's quite interesting because this type of projects and also raise this interesting question, like we are of who has the right to use what material. No, like when you're kind of like bringing different traditions together. I was talking before about this folk music singer. So it's interesting that within Sounds Now you can also contextualize the use of these materials and who is the sender, who are the listeners, and why are we actually using them? Is it a question of pure appropriation, or is it a question of, let's say, natural consequence of a certain globalization? What does it mean to use a material here and not there? So it's kind of, this kind of questions are behind these productions.
There's a very beautiful project that we're doing this year with the guitar quartet Zwerm and two sopranos, Sofia Burgos and Sofia Jernberg. And that is centered towards a kind of looking back at old archival materials, gramophone recordings from the 1920s, the very first time in history when musics from around the world were being recorded and disseminated. Music's not only kind of Western classical music, obviously that happened too, but the first time that tango, rembetico, all those type of local traditions were first recorded and circulated, and have a composer look at that material and do something with it. And of course, the composer himself is still a very Western, in this case American, white male composer. So in terms of representation, that is still a kind of stereotypical standardized situation. But in terms of approach towards a kind of musical repertoire and material and musical process, that is already opening up so many things.
also think it's interesting because you asked shortly about the ethics in projects for children, and it's quite interesting in all this kind of like, let's say, participation projects. Some of them have, when you work with children, it's very difficult to go away from a pedagogical or a didactic frame. No, you always have this kind of like, what world do I want these children to live in, or what do we want them to learn from it? And so we had this interesting discussion, which was a preparation for Sounds Now production, which was about what do you want, how do you prepare children for life, let's say? So what kind of values do you want to defend? And there was this contradiction between the more like, in the Norwegian, I would say Norway is more typical to have this kind of soft approach. So you prepare yourself for life by feeling cherished, feeling that your voice counts, feeling that you can express yourself and be creative. So you create a kind of resiliency through this confidence, whereas some of the children that we were working with, they come from a different culture where there was this kind of harder approach where you think like, okay, to prepare oneself for life, you need to be resilient by learning to, confront hardships. Yeah. So you need to develop a hard skin. So if you're working with children that come from completely different backgrounds, you also have to see that there's many different approaches in there. The one is not more right than the other. One would automatically judge the, let's say, hard approach. But there's something about it, of course. So I find it very interesting that in whatever situation, you have to confront all this different models and ideologies.
This child thing everybody has, no matter what age you are, keep on growing, keep it growing, keep this fantasy, this creativity, an ongoing thing. Keep on listening, because we are in a very visual world. Keep on listening, be more attentive. Do you say that like that? Be more attentive. So, yeah, I think that's a very important message for the future, and that's why we work with all kind of generations, but not separately. But we really go for this intergenerative perspective. Is that correct?
Intergenerational.
Thank you. We really go for this intergenerational perspective.
But I think the curating labs are, for me, one of the biggest assets of this project, because there you get an outreach to people that are really working on this and that have a voice for the future.
I do think, so I will not have an answer to your question, but I think the right answer is probably that those during these COVID years, art institutions who dared to really not really follow how we used to do things, but those who were daring to do mistakes probably will have done better for the future than those who tried to stick with the classical rules or the classical ways of working, because this process of change, it's not over yet, I fear.